a royal gala, a world-famous pianist, and a challenge no one saw coming. When Lang Lang, one of the most celebrated pianists alive, took the stage at Kensington Palace, he didn't just perform, he provoked. In front of royalty, he questioned whether Prince William had ever truly felt music, and dared him to prove it at Royal Albert Hall. Most expected silence, but what followed would leave even the most seasoned critics stunned. What happens when a future king steps away from titles and towards vulnerability? When memory becomes melody? Stay with us, because this story strikes a note you'll never forget. A night of elegance turns tense. The evening was set to be nothing more than royal routine. The Harmony for Hope Gala was designed with one goal in mind: elegance. Hosted in the grand ballroom of Kensington Palace, the event promised a glittering night of music and diplomacy. Chandeliers sparkled, violins played in the background, and tables were filled with dignitaries, diplomats, and donors. It wasn't meant to make headlines, but fate had a different tune to play. Prince William and Princess Catherine arrived, looking every bit the poised royal couple. William in a sharp black tuxedo, and Catherine in a soft gold gown that shimmered under the chandeliers. Their entrance was calm and composed, just as the press expected. Handshakes, photos, a few light laughs. The couple moved gracefully through the room, chatting with scholarship recipients and arts patrons. Everything felt rehearsed, but not cold, just polished. The purpose of the gala was meaningful. The event supported music education for underprivileged youth across the Commonwealth, something William had always supported publicly, though rarely demonstrated personally. Everyone expected the night to be celebratory and safe. But just as the last glass of wine was poured and the final performance of the night was about to begin, something shifted. The host stepped up to the microphone with a beaming smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, "please welcome tonight's special guest, the incomparable Lang Lang." Applause followed, but it was polite, not roaring. People sat up straighter. They knew his reputation as a world-renowned pianist. But what no one knew, not even William himself, was that the next few minutes would turn this formal event into a moment of public challenge, quiet tension, and unexpected transformation. As the applause faded and Lang Lang approached the grand piano, the tone of the night subtly cracked. No one could predict what would happen next, not even the future king. And in just a few bold words, a world-famous musician would shake the very foundation of royal composure. Lang Lang's mic drop. Lang Lang stood in the center of the room like he owned it. And in that moment, he did. He wasn't just there to play the piano. He was there to say something, and he didn't wait long. Before even touching a single key, he took the microphone and scanned the crowd. His voice was calm, but his message cut deep. "I've played many stages," he began, "but tonight is different, because tonight I ask a question." His eyes landed directly on the royal table. "We are joined by royalty," he continued, his tone polite, but unmistakably sharp. "But I wonder, when was the last time a royal actually played music? Or is art just another ribbon to cut?" There it was, the challenge. No smiles, no soft lead-in. Just a world-class pianist asking the future King of England, "Are you more than a symbol? Are you real?" Gasps filled the room. Some guests laughed nervously. Others leaned in, waiting for a reaction. William sat a bit straighter. His expression barely shifted. A faint smile crossed his lips, but his eyes narrowed. Catherine reached for her wine glass slowly. Lang Lang wasn't finished. "Your Royal Highness," he said, locking eyes with William, "if you truly love music, prove it. 1 month from now, at my concert in Royal Albert Hall, play. Any piece, no titles, no crown, just your hands and the keys. You could hear forks drop. Murmurs spread like ripples in water. William said nothing. He gave a tight nod and a diplomatic smile, but his jaw clenched. Lang Lang then sat down and launched into a thunderous Rachmaninoff prelude, as if he'd never spoken. But the air had changed. The gala had ended, not with champagne or celebration, but with a royal dare that no one saw coming. The applause rang out, but it couldn't drown the echo of that challenge. And while the world moved on to the next headline, Prince William quietly disappeared into the shadows of Kensington Palace. But not to hide. What he did next would reveal the heart behind the crown and the echo of a memory long buried. The memory that haunts back at the palace long after the guests had left, Prince. William made his way through the halls, not to his chambers, but to a quiet wing of the palace almost no one visited anymore. A place from his childhood. A place that once held toys and stories and laughter. It was now a small reading room. But at the far end of it sat something more powerful than any speech he could have given that night. A dusty, forgotten, upright piano. He approached it slowly. Its mahogany finish had faded. The keys were yellowed with age. He reached out and pressed one gently. A brittle G note buzzed, out of tune and slightly sharp. He exhaled. "Still broken," he whispered. Then came the memory. Ludgrove Prep School, age 11, his first piano lessons with Miss Dempsey. Her silver hair, her whispery fingers, and her quiet words, "You play like someone who listens to the space between the notes." That's rare. But the memory that hit hardest wasn't from school. It was from home. He remembered Diana, his mother, sitting beside him at this very piano, laughing, playing silly tunes with Harry. Her perfume, her warmth, her belief in joy over perfection. "Music," she once said, "is where feelings go when words aren't enough." William sat on the old piano bench, spine straight, fingers trembling. He didn't play anything complicated, just a few shaky notes. But for the first time in years, he felt something awaken. Then he stood, walked to his desk, and made the call. "Simon," he said to his private secretary, "I need a piano technician here tomorrow." There was a pause. "And someone who can teach quietly and quickly." "May I ask why, sir?" the secretary asked. William's answer was simple. "I've just accepted a challenge, and I need to remember who I used to be." The stage had been set. The memory had been stirred. And now, behind the palace walls, preparations began. But not with fanfare, with focus. Because if William was going to play, he'd need a teacher. And the one they found wasn't just a teacher. He was a legend. And he wasn't impressed. Enter Sir Edward Avery. 3 days after the gala, a nondescript black car rolled quietly into a side entrance at Kensington Palace. No photographers, no royal procession. Inside it sat Sir Edward Avery, a name once whispered in the great music halls of Europe. A legendary pianist turned recluse after a stroke ended his career mid-performance. He hadn't taught in over a decade. But the palace's request had intrigued him. The message they'd sent was clear. The prince requires a mentor, not for ceremony, for skill. At first he scoffed. Royals weren't his kind of students. He had no time for vanity or polite applause. But something about the tone, humble, urgent, made him say yes. When he entered the palace's music room and saw Prince William already standing by the piano in a simple sweater and rolled sleeves, something shifted. This wasn't a man asking for praise. He was asking for help. "You called for a teacher," Sir Edward said flatly. "Wait." William looked him dead in the eye. "Because I've been challenged, and I don't want to disgrace the memory of someone who once believed I could play." The room fell quiet. Edward paused. "Your mother?" William nodded once. It was all he needed to say, Sir Edward walked to the piano and ran a hand across the polished lid. "When was the last time you practiced properly?" "Maybe age 11, William admitted. Edward grunted. "So your muscle memory is dead. Good. We'll start fresh." And fresh they did. The first hour was brutal. William's fingers were stiff, his wrists locked up. He fumbled over even the simplest scales. "You play like a man trying to look correct," Edward snapped. "Music doesn't care how it looks. It cares how it feels." William nodded. "No special treatment," he said. "Just the truth." Sir Edward raised an eyebrow and replied, "Then here's the truth. If you're serious, I can teach you to survive that stage, but your fingers will bleed long before the press does." And with that, the metronome ticked to life, and the prince became the student. With the world outside unaware, a silent transformation had begun. The future king wasn't learning how to impress. He was learning how to feel. But behind every great comeback is a brutal training phase. And what came next would stretch William beyond anything royal life had prepared him for. Discipline and defiance. William's days were still filled with handshakes, charity visits, and camera flashes. But his nights had changed. Each evening after his children went to sleep, he slipped into the refurbished music room. Sir Edward was always there waiting, impatient, sharp, and holding a chipped teacup like a conductor's baton. "Again," he'd say, after William missed a run of notes. And this time, mean it. Palace staff began to notice subtle changes. Lunch meetings were moved. Engagements were shortened just enough to create slivers of time. 10 minutes here, 15 there. Diary conflict, aides would say. But behind closed doors, the diary was being rewritten around Chopin and Debussy. One senior aide later said, "He didn't ask us to make room for the piano. He made room for it himself." The training was punishing. William's fingers ached. His back stiffened. His posture collapsed under pressure. But he kept going. Even when Sir Edward snapped at him for playing too cautiously. "You're not a prince at this piano," he barked. "You're just a man. Stop asking permission." William replied, "I've spent my whole life asking permission." Edward didn't flinch. "Then stop." Every lesson peeled away the polished layers of royalty. Sir Edward wasn't teaching notes. He was teaching nerve. He forced William to confront every ounce of doubt. And William took it, night after night, scale after scale. And in that quiet room, where notes replaced words, a new kind of discipline was born. Not based on duty, but desire. William was changing, but quietly. The palace hadn't issued a single statement. Yet something new was stirring behind its walls. And through it all, one person remained William's anchor, Catherine. What she did next didn't involve a piano or press, just heart. And it came exactly when he needed it most. The silent strength beside him. While William faced a challenge that few royals would dare accept, Catherine kept the world calm. She maintained their public duties, smiled at events, and fielded the growing media curiosity without giving anything away. But behind palace doors, she was more than a wife. She was the quiet strength William leaned on when doubt began to whisper louder than music. She never questioned the late-night practices, never asked why her husband's hands were calloused, or why he seemed distracted at dinner. She simply supported, quietly, gently. One evening, after a particularly rough rehearsal, William returned upstairs exhausted. He'd slammed the piano lid in frustration earlier and walked out without a word. When he entered their bedroom, something unexpected was waiting. On the bed lay a single envelope. No royal crest. Just the name Wills in Catherine's familiar handwriting. Inside was a photo, an old one, of a young William sitting beside Diana at the nursery piano. She was laughing. He was beaming. On the back of the photo, one short message. "She believed in you. So do I." William sat down without speaking. He held the photo for a long time, staring not at himself, but at her, at Diana. And suddenly, the weight he'd been carrying shifted. That night, he walked back down to the piano, not to perfect a piece, but to remember a feeling. He played with no sheet music, no direction, just memory. And Catherine, from the hallway, watched with quiet pride. He wasn't just learning to play. He was learning why he needed to. And while the lessons continued behind closed doors, the world was beginning to catch on. Because once the press saw a prince playing piano, they couldn't stop watching. What came next? A media firestorm. And William was right in the middle. Royal rumors catch fire. At first, it was just whispers. Paparazzi caught glimpses of a piano being delivered to Kensington Palace. Then came the photos. Blurry, long-lens images taken from across Hyde Park. They showed Prince William, sleeves rolled up, sitting at a grand piano in deep focus. The tabloids pounced, and just like that, William's private mission exploded into a public spectacle. Headlines ran wild. Royal Rumble at the Keys, and Prince versus Prodigy, the Lang Lang Showdown. Betting sites launched odds on whether William would miss a note, freeze on stage, or even back out. Social media split. Half poked fun. The other half was stunned at the prince's boldness. Parody videos popped up. One clip layered William's photo with off-key cartoon piano jingles. It was everywhere. But while the world laughed, William stayed silent. He offered no interviews, no rebuttals, not even a cryptic palace statement. He just kept practicing. Catherine took the heat, gently shielding the kids from questions, brushing off reporters, and maintaining a calm, composed front. "It's just a piano," she joked to one photographer. "I didn't know pianos caused such panic." Behind the scenes, though, the pressure was very real. The whispers were now a roar. Even seasoned palace aides were nervous. One was overheard saying, "What if he flops? This could haunt him forever." But William wasn't listening to any of it. His ears were focused only on the music. As he told Sir Edward one night, "Let them talk. I'll let the notes answer." The stage was now set, not by the royals, but by the public. Everyone wanted to know, would William actually go through with it? Or was this just a PR stunt gone too far? But while the press stirred the pot, Lang Lang stepped back into the spotlight with a message of his own. And it wasn't what anyone expected. Reckless, maybe? Brave? We'll see. Lang Lang had remained quiet since the gala, letting the tension build. But with cameras circling and the world on edge, he finally broke his silence. In a sleek BBC interview filmed inside a grand London concert hall, he addressed the moment that started it all, and the royal who dared to accept his challenge. "I've always admired the British royal family," he began with a polite smile. "But I must confess, I was surprised when the prince said yes." The host leaned in. Why surprised? Lang Lang's smile lingered, a touch sharper now. "Because it's rare. Most people in power avoid being vulnerable, but he walked straight into it." Then came the quote that lit up social media. "It takes courage," Lang Lang said, "and perhaps a little recklessness. The stage is a great equalizer." That one sentence exploded online. Reckless? Was that admiration or a subtle jab? The world debated it endlessly. Memes, think pieces, and reaction videos flooded in. The clip went viral in hours. Inside Kensington Palace, Sir Edward rolled his eyes. "Reckless, is it?" he said, smirking. "We'll show him reckless." But William wasn't angry. If anything, the comment refocused him. "Let them doubt," he told Catherine. "It'll make the music louder." His hands may have been sore, but his mind was sharper than ever. From that moment, he wasn't playing to compete. He was playing to connect. And it showed. Because what started as pressure was becoming something else entirely. This wasn't about beating Lang Lang or proving the press wrong. It was about something far more personal, a rediscovery, a healing. And with each passing day, William wasn't just learning piano, he was remembering who he used to be. From duty to dream. At first, the piano had been a challenge, but now it was a refuge, a retreat. William's fingers found familiar keys not because he memorized them, but because they remembered him. Childhood grief, adult expectation, royal duty. It all melted into the notes, and for the first time in years, he wasn't fulfilling a role. He was living a moment. He started practicing everywhere, under tables during charity banquets, on plane trays using muscle memory. One aide recalled, "He was tapping scales during a call with the Minister of Defense. We thought he was distracted. Turns out, he was focused in a way we'd never seen." The music was grounding him, not just as a royal, as a man. Even the family driver noticed. William asked for classical recordings during every commute. Debussy, Chopin, Liszt. Sometimes he hummed along softly, eyes closed, fingers drumming the beat on his lap. "Preparing for a concert, sir," the driver once joked. William just smiled. "Something like that," he replied. But it wasn't about the performance anymore. It was about returning to a part of himself he thought he'd lost. At night, the music room became his sanctuary. No reporters, no formality, no scripts. Just the metronome, the piano, and the sound of trying. "You're not the same man who started this," Sir Edward told him. "Good," William said quietly. "That's the point." And in that moment, the future king wasn't preparing for a spotlight. He was chasing a memory. But memories don't just guide, they ignite. What happened next wasn't planned. It wasn't scripted. But it came at exactly the right moment, and from exactly the right person. A gift that didn't come with a crown, but with love. And it would shift everything. A moment of emotional clarity. It was late, well past midnight, when William returned to their private quarters. His hands were trembling. The rehearsal had gone badly. Sir Edward had walked out mid-piece, shaking his head, saying, "Posture is not passion." William, for once, had lost his composure. He slammed the piano lid and left the music room in silence. He wasn't just tired. He was doubting everything. On their bed sat a single white envelope. No crest, no seal, just the word "Wills" in Catherine's neat, looping handwriting. Inside was a photograph, faded at the corners, slightly wrinkled. It showed a young William, no more than 8, sitting at the old palace piano beside his mother. Princess Diana was mid-laugh, her hand over his, the other on the keys. Her eyes were shining. Beneath the photo was a small note. Catherine had written just 7 words. "She believed in you. So do I." That was it. No speech, no royal pressure, just belief. William sat on the edge of the bed, silent, staring at his mother's face. It wasn't about Lang Lang. It wasn't about the press. It never was. It was about her. And suddenly, everything clicked. Without a word, William got up and walked down the corridor. Back to the nursery-turned-music room. He sat at the piano without warming up, without sheet music, and began to play. Not for a stage, but for memory. The melody was soft, imperfect, and full of feeling. "This," he whispered after the final note. "This is Wemai." That night changed the music forever. Now it wasn't a performance. It was a tribute. And while Catherine gave him that quiet moment of clarity, the world outside was only getting louder. The countdown to the concert had begun, and every headline was aimed straight at him. But this time, he wasn't afraid of the noise. He was ready for it. And the press turns performance into pressure. The palace gates stayed closed, but the press was relentless. A leaked photo, William practicing in the West Wing, had gone viral. Media outlets now covered his piano journey like a royal tour. "Prince or pianist?" read one headline. "Will William crash or compose?" read another. But inside Kensington Palace, the tone was very different. It wasn't panic, it was preparation. Lang Lang kept the tension simmering. In every interview, he praised William's bravery, but always with a twist. "He has heart," he told BBC, "but the stage is merciless." That clip played on loop across talk shows and TikTok. Every word dissected, every pause analyzed. It was no longer just a challenge. It had become a full-blown cultural moment. And yet, William didn't flinch. No press statement, no rebuttal. His only response was music. Support poured in from places no one expected. Letters from war veterans, emails from teenage music students. "You made me want to try again," wrote one young man from Manchester. A retired teacher from Yorkshire said, "For the first time in years, I see a royal as real." Even palace staff were rooting for him. One royal aide quietly told a reporter, "I've never seen him like this. Focused, free." But perhaps the strongest signal came from William himself. When asked at a charity dinner if he was nervous for the upcoming concert, he smiled and replied, "Only when I forget who I'm playing for." The answer said it all. With just days left until the concert, the world wasn't waiting for a royal performance. They were waiting for a royal revelation. And as the lights dimmed on the eve of that historic night, only one question remained. Would the prince rise, or would he retreat? The Royal Albert Reckoning. Royal Albert Hall shimmered like a jewel beneath the cold London sky. Inside, it was standing room only. Diplomats, artists, aristocrats, and curious spectators filled the velvet seats. Everyone held their breath. This wasn't just a concert. It was history in motion. A future king was about to sit not on a throne, but on a piano bench. Lang Lang performed first. As expected, he was flawless. His fingers danced, thundered, soared across the keys. A standing ovation followed. Then, silence. One spotlight turned, and William walked on stage. No medals, no military sash, just a plain black suit and a man holding his breath. He gave a slight bow, then sat down beside Lang Lang for the duet. They began to play Clair de Lune, two pianos, one melody. William's playing wasn't perfect, but it was powerful. His fingers missed a note here, rushed a beat there, but every sound was full of feeling. As the piece reached its soft crescendo, a hush fell across the audience. No one blinked. No one moved. Time, for a moment, stood still. When the final note faded, it wasn't immediate applause. It was silence. And then, a single clap. Then another. And suddenly, thunderous ovation. The crowd wasn't clapping for perfection. They were clapping for heart. Lang Lang stood, turned to William, and gave him a full, formal bow. William bowed back, this time not as a prince, but as a man. And yet, the most powerful moment of the night wasn't on stage. It came later. When William returned home, stepped into the quiet music room, and sat once more at the old upright piano. There was no audience, no cameras, just him, a memory, and the music. Not for a prince, but for a man. The reviews poured in by morning. Human, raw, unforgettable. William didn't conquer the piano. He conquered our expectations. Social media lit up with one simple phrase. He did it. But for William, the headlines didn't matter. The ovation didn't matter. Only one thing did. What he felt when the music ended. Relief, yes, but something more. Peace backstage, Catherine had wrapped him in a hug. "You did it," she whispered. "Not for them. For you." Sir Edward, stoic as ever, gave a rare smile. "You didn't crash and burn," he said. "Miraculous, really." Even Lang Lang offered a handshake that lingered just a second longer than expected, a gesture of genuine respect. Later that night, long after the lights dimmed and the guests had gone, William returned to the piano room. He sat down not to practice, not to impress, but simply to play. His fingers danced lightly over the restored keys. There were no wrong notes, no right ones either, just truth. just sound, just William. And in that moment, he understood. This wasn't about proving himself to the world. It was about reconnecting to the boy who once sat beside his mother and believed music was magic. Now, as a man, he had found that magic again, not as a prince, but as a son, as a father, as himself. When the final note of Clair de Lune faded at Royal Albert Hall, it wasn't just applause that followed, it was reverence. Prince William didn't play like a virtuoso. He didn't need to. He played like a man with something to say. A man honoring the memory of his mother, rediscovering a forgotten part of himself, and reminding the world that behind every title is a human heart. Lang Lang, once his challenger, bowed not to a prince, but to an equal, and perhaps to a man he no longer underestimated. Back in the palace, William returned to that same old piano. No stage, no spotlights, just the music. His music. And in that quiet, he wasn't Prince William, Duke of Cambridge, future king. He was simply William, a father, a son, a student of sound. Because in the end, what silenced the world wasn't perfection. It was honesty, note by note. So what do you think? Was it courage, redemption, or something deeper? Let us know in the comments below. And if this story moved you, like and subscribe for more unforgettable journeys just like this one. Until next time, keep listening between the notes.